The original iPad Pro was released in 2015, sporting the largest iPad screen and body we've ever seen to date. That iPad sparked the next generation of iPads, leading us eventually to the 2018 iPad Pro refresh, which you are going to be taking a look at today.
Hi, welcome to the TC. My name's David, and today we're going to be taking a look at the 2018 iPad Pro 12.9 inch, and I'm going to be telling you guys why I think it's still an amazing iPad today.
The 2018 iPad Pros were refreshed in October of 2018, sporting a completely new design from past iPads and sparking the new design trend being used even in the iPhone and the newest iPad Air. The new iPad Pros came in a more squared-off design, was inspiration from the iPhone XR for the display, dragging the screen to the edges and curving it to make a uniform display in less size than previously. Because of this, the 2018 12.9-inch iPad Pro was significantly smaller than the previous 12.9-inch iPad Pros, and this translated into a smaller frame, slimmer bezels, and lighter weight, while also ditching the home button in favor of gesture controls like the iPhone X. This was also the first time that the bigger size iPad Pro shared the same thickness as the smaller Pro, measuring at a tiny 5.9mm. This makes the 12.9-inch and 11-inch third generation iPad Pros the second thinnest devices that Apple has ever released, the thinnest being the iPod Touch 7th generation. This thinness did come at a compromise, as some might remember though, as there was an issue in the beginning of people's iPad Pros bending. This was partially due to an error in the manufacturing process, but also due to the thinness of the device. My advice would be to keep the iPad in a case and you should be fine. It doesn't feel particularly fragile, so you should be okay. The actual frame of the iPad is made of a milled piece of aluminum, and you can get it in either space gray like I have here, or a silver option as well. There are antenna lines that go across the top only on the Wi-Fi models, unless you have the cellular option like this, which also has them on the bottom here. We also see that there is the iconic 4-speaker system on this iPad Pro, just like all the generations, as well as the power and side button on top, and a microphone up top as well. The volume buttons can be found on the right side. There is also a magnetic strip on the right side which supplies power for the Apple Pencil when it's docked on its side. On the bottom we can find the USB-C port and the other two speaker grills, two on the top, two on the bottom. On the back we have the Apple logo, as well as the camera, a microphone, a flash, and the smart connector on the bottom. Flipping it over to the front, things get pretty simple. It's mostly a screen except for near the top bezel, where we can see the whole TrueDepth system for Face ID, as well as another microphone. Overall, the design of the iPad Pro 12.9-inch 2018 is really nice and super modern looking. Considering the same basic design is still being used today, I would argue that this iPad will look pretty fresh and modern for years to come. The cameras on both 2018 iPad Pros basically steal the sensor from the XR. They both have the same exact 12 megapixel sensor on the back and the same TrueDepth system on the front. The major difference is that the iPad Pro omitted the optical image stabilization, which I honestly think was a mistake. Now, I'm coming from the 10.5-inch iPad Pro, and that had optical image stabilization. It meant that when I took photos of documents or text at all, and especially for videos, they came out pretty clear even when lighting conditions weren't so great. I can understand they might argue, well, you don't need to have it since it's an iPad, but I feel like if you're paying almost $1,000 for this device, it shouldn't skimp on small things like that. Apple's reasoning for this is probably due to the fact they had to squeeze the camera into a 5.9mm device, their website stating that they tucked it immediately behind the bezel in order to fit it. Other than that, the cameras are relatively good, especially since they have the same software features as the iPhone XR, like Smart HDR and Portrait Mode for the front-facing camera. There's also 4K video at up to 60 frames per second and 1080p on the front camera. Also, because we have the Face ID tech, this means that the iPad does use Face ID for its biometric security, and as a result, it is more akin to the newer iPhones, and one feature it actually does have over them though, it's the ability to unlock in any orientation, portrait, and landscape. Overall, the cameras are uneventful, but they're also not offending in quality. I would say they're like a B+. Taking a look at the display on the 2018 12.9-inch iPad Pro, we get the Liquid Retina display, which is basically an LCD. However, this LCD is actually really good, and the colors are amazing. There's also 120Hz refresh rate with ProMotion, just like the previous generation iPad Pro. The display's bezels are adequately thin too, I'd argue, and is uniform across the whole display, which is quite nice. It actually kind of reminds me of that first generation iPad. However, of course, these bezels are a lot thinner. There's also no home button, which means that it has the same exact gestures from the iPhone 10 and later. The gestures are second nature to me at this point, so it's really intuitive to use. The 12.9-inch model, however, is absolutely huge. This huge canvas allows you to have two apps side by side in a view that is like having two full iPad screens side by side. The Face ID tech is also on the top of the iPad Pro, meaning that you can lock it using biometrics. However, like I mentioned before, it works in any orientation unlike iPhones. If you happen to cover the camera while unlocking, the iPad will warn you and place an arrow over the camera to remind you to remove whatever is in its way. The Face ID sensor also works with other apps for security and passwords, so it's convenient to have. My only complaint is that the black levels on this display aren't amazing. However, I do think it does look better compared to my old 10.5-inch. There is now the mini LED display that they have on the newest iPad Pro too, so that should take care of black levels in case that's something that you're worried about. It's not bad at all, and it's still a really great display. The 2018 iPad Pros introduced the Apple A12X processor, which has 8 CPU cores and 7 GPU cores. This is basically a beefed up A12 Bionic processor, and it basically added 2 CPU cores and 3 extra GPU cores. This allowed it to be a lot quicker than anything that we've ever seen back then, and even today it holds up really well. This is also the first Apple processor to feature a fully in-house design for the GPU, meaning that Apple made both the CPU and GPU, which actually led to an incredible increase in graphics power in this iPad compared to last gen. I ran an Antutu benchmark for this versus my old 10.5-inch iPad Pro, which is the second generation, and you can see that the score is crazy fast on the 2018, even though it's only a year newer. This power translates to an amazing experience. There hasn't been a time where it's really lagged at all for me, even when hammering it. This is also paired with 4GB of RAM, which I think is the weak spot for this particular model, but it still performs amazing. You can actually opt for 6GB of RAM if you do get the 1TB option for this generation. However, I don't think that it really provides a major speed increase for the iPad Pro 2018. It doesn't have any issues with editing 4K videos, taking 4K videos, editing huge RAW files, and drawing with very high resolution canvases. And because of that, I think that the 2018 iPad Pros will honestly get updates for a very long time. And if you have one, you shouldn't have any issues using it for the next 4 to 5 years even. The speakers on the iPad Pro line have always had 4 speakers, 2 in the top and 2 in the bottom. However, with the 2018 iPad Pro, the speakers changed to include a woofer and a tweeter in each corner of the iPad. Because of this, each speaker is the same size and it allows for a very immersive sound from both sides. The iPad also adjusts the way it sounds based on how you're holding it. The bottom speakers will always cover for the bass and the lower mids, while the top speakers will play the treble and higher mids. This changes whether you hold it in portrait and landscape, but either way you hold it, it sounds great. It even gives my 2019 13-inch MacBook Pro a run for its speakers. The mics are alright, and with the new iPad Pro 3rd Gen was the inclusion of stereo recording, allowing dual channel inputs for the microphone. This allowed for a much wider soundstage than previously. Overall, the speakers and the mic on the 2018 iPad Pros are pretty great even today, and I don't really have any issues with them. If you want to hear how it sounds, here's an example. So here's a camera test of the iPad Pro 12.9-inch 2018, and also a microphone test for it as well. So, well, you'll have to excuse my hair, but this is the front-facing camera at 1080p at 30 frames per second. You can also record in 1080p at 60 frames per second, but there is no 4K. So that is something to consider. Also, one thing that's really annoying me right now is the fact that the camera is on the edge, on the top here, and I'm holding it horizontally. So if I'm holding the iPad in the middle, straight in the middle like this is what it looks like. But if I angle the iPad so the camera's right in front of me, this is what it looks like. Now the screen is to my right. So this isn't super amazing for video calls, I would say, but it's livable. I wish that Apple would actually put the camera on the middle, on the top of the right side of the iPad Pro, because that would make more sense, right? I mean, most people who are going to be in video calls and stuff like that aren't going to be holding their iPad in portrait. So hopefully that's something that they do consider for the future iPads. And here, of course, here is a rear-facing camera comparison for the iPad Pro 2018. So this is what the rear camera looks like recording video at 4K at 30 frames per second. So let me know how it sounds and how it looks. Do you think it sounds pretty good? Does it sound bad? I don't know. You let me know. Okay. If we take a look at the battery now, the battery on this particular iPad Pro 12.9 inch is still fairly good. It is from early 2019, so about a year and a half now, but it still holds a charge quite well and lasts for a very long time. I've had yet to have it go under 50% on a full day of usage, so that shows just how well it holds up. I would say that the only thing that kind of sucks is the charging situation, since it has such a large battery. In fact, the battery is actually bigger than what's in the 13-inch MacBook Pro, almost by twice as much. That means that charging can take a very long time. I usually connect it to my 87-watt charger for a 15-inch MacBook Pro, but even then it usually takes about 15 minutes for maybe around 20% charge. So it's definitely a slow charging device. If you're using something like the 20-watt included power brick, I can definitely see it taking a very, very long time to fully charge. What is cool though is that you can actually use this iPad as a battery bank, meaning that you can plug a USB-C to Lightning or USB-C to USB-C and use it to charge other devices like your iPhone, AirPods, or Android phones too. It makes the iPad Pro much more accessible as a laptop replacement than previous generations in that regard. Of course, some standout accessories for the iPad Pro are the Apple Pencil, the Smart Keyboard, and the Magic Keyboard. The Apple Pencil 2 was designed for this generation iPad Pro first, and it cleverly docks itself using strong magnets across the right side of the iPad Pro. When you snap it on, you can see it start to charge wirelessly, allowing you to always have a full charge on the pencil when you go to use it. The magnets are also quite strong, so it doesn't easily fall off the iPad. The pencil itself is smaller than the first generation Apple Pencil, and it's also in a matte finish, and it has a touch sensor on the flat side that allows you to configure it with different settings, such as I have here with the pen and eraser. With the Smart Keyboard, we get a cover that snaps onto the iPad, also using magnets once again. But compared to the older Smart Keyboard, this has two adjustment angles to make typing on it more comfortable. It also covers the entire back and front of the iPad, which is nice, and it's quite thin. With the Magic Keyboard, the iPad Pro becomes quite heavy. The Magic Keyboard, however, offers one of the best typing experiences I've ever had on an iPad, making it feel really close to my MacBook Pro. My main complaint with this keyboard, though, would be the lack of function keys on the top, as well as its weight. It does have a USB-C on the keyboard, which allows you to charge the iPad Pro, leaving the port on the iPad free for any accessories you'd like to attach. The keyboard is also backlit, meaning it can be used in dark environments, unlike the Smart Keyboard. However, you can't adjust the lighting levels of the backlight. So if it's not bright enough, or if it's, you don't want it on at all, you can't adjust that. It also has a trackpad on the bottom, which is quite smooth feeling and is evenly clickable no matter where you press it, which I thought was pretty nice. It's a really pricey accessory, but they seem to have sales for them every now and then, so I'd say if you can get it for less than $200, then it is definitely worth it. Of course, the iPad Pro also features a USB-C port, allowing for a plethora of accessories that you can attach. I'm able to use my USB-C dock with it, and it allows me to connect Ethernet, charge, HDMI, and multiple USBs, such as a portable SSD, which all connect over one USB-C cable to my iPad. Because of this, the iPad Pro can become a completely different machine, especially compared to the older generation. And this is why I do think that this generation and newer iPad Pros really are a game changer when it comes to actual usability in a professional setting. Editing videos are completely different on this iPad, since it allows me to view it on my display and edit off an SSD at the same time, something that would not have been possible on my 10.5-inch iPad Pro. Because of USB-C, I can argue that this iPad is in a completely different league when it comes to usability, and I know that in the future this will hold up quite well. That isn't to say that the 10.5-inch is a bad iPad though. In fact, I did a video on that, and you can watch that in the description if you'd like. But there are so many quality of life features on this one that really makes it a winner for me. Overall, the 2018 iPad Pro is still really amazing in 2021, and I can see this iPad being great for many more years to come. I really enjoy its display, the USB-C connector, as well as the newer accessories such as the Apple Pencil 2 and the Magic Keyboard, and overall, I feel like it makes a really great package.
So that's going to be it for today's video. Let me know in the comments your guys' thoughts on the 12.9-inch iPad Pro from 2018, and also the 11-inch, and what do you guys think about the new iPad Pros? Do you think it's worth it over the third generation? Or do you think the older generation is still pretty worthy today? Personally, I do think that they are pretty worthy, considering that I'm able to edit all my videos off of these iPads flawlessly. Like, there's no interruptions. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Also, if you liked what you saw, leave a like down below and consider subscribing to see more content just like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.